Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trade Australia. I'm your host, Lawrence Christoffels. Today's episode's all about the importance and increased importance of data across supply chains and how stakeholders, service providers and customers are utilising data and what they want to do with that and how important it is to make sure they can manage their supply chains efficiently and cost effectively. To kick off today's episode, I've got the absolute pleasure of being joined all the way from Sydney via Zoom by Tomic. Sue's the chair of Supply Chain Logistics Association of Australia, SCLAA. Hi Sue, thanks for joining me on today's show.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Always good to talk to you, Sue. And I've asked you to be part of the show because obviously the association, your members, but also you personally, you've been across this sector for so long. And the theme of today's episode is all around data, the evolution of data across supply chains, and the rapidly changing face of how data is really taking hold. So I wanted to ask you, Sue, what's been your experience of data capturing and data tracking over the journey of your career in supply chain?
Well, certainly when I first entered the industry, it was a monumental hurdle to try and get my head around how data sharing worked across the different sectors of the supply chain. And it was very disparate. It continues to be, but there's certainly been improvements and fast tracking of software solution where data sharing is still secured, but capable in providing efficiencies across different sectors and different users of software. So I think those companies and industries that have embraced change and embraced new software solutions and innovation have probably raised to the fore of the industry. Companies like Maersk, who are certainly investing a lot of time, resources, and money into their data capabilities with their customers, is racing to the forefront in the shipping industry. We also have a number of companies in Australia that are very innovative, and the step change that COVID has brought upon us all in the last few years has, I believe, fast-tracked the need and the speed for delivery of software solutions where data sharing can occur.
So Sue, thanks for that insight. Totally agree with you. I think one of the things that I've observed, and I wanted to get your opinion and feedback, is that supply chain, there's so many stakeholders, touch points when it comes to data, whether it's the carriers, the shippers, the terminals, trucking companies, forwarders, they're all using multiple platforms, multiple ways to use that data and capture the data. Have you seen that the cooperation or the transfer of that data is becoming better?
I would love to say yes, Lawrence. Slowly, it is becoming better.
Yep.
There's still a very long way to go because of the intricate nature of the different operations along the supply chain. And also there seems to be still the perception of distrust of data sharing. That sort of security and fear factor of sharing data is dissipated somewhat. I don't believe there will be true sharing, although everyone recognizes that there needs to be for efficiency. I mean, the number of times the different stakeholders type in a container number, for example, it's all along the supply chain, and it's just so prone to errors from one player to the next to get, things wrong that end up costing tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And I think what's really happened there, Sue, that has created a real cost to serve impact when it comes to that lack of data sharing or data transparency, is that what we've found and what we've observed during COVID is that so many bottlenecks may have happened if a port gets closed, say what's happening now in China, and you have
Correct.
to make quick decisions, and those agility, if you haven't got that visibility, that can literally cost a lot of money because that journey of the cargo keeps going where you could have potentially stopped it earlier or changed it.
Absolutely, Lawrence. And it's ironic that, physical movement of goods sometimes is faster than the transfer of data needs to be. So the industry certainly needs to, as a whole, have a look at what solutions and what platforms might be able to work in their favor across the different sectors and the different users.
Yeah. And I think what I love about what you're doing with the association is that you're really engaging with your members, you're showcasing these type of opportunities to not only have the dialogue, but I know with some of the partners that you've got with SCLAA, so there's some great software providers already who are really up in the ante with some of these solutions. So I think what you're doing with the association is invaluable to help not only the shippers themselves, but the service providers work together and to really stay abreast of what's out there when it comes to these type of technology innovations.
It's absolutely critical to bring those service providers to the industry and vice versa to get the proper solutions in place. Yes. And it tends to be a very high topic of discussion. Data capability, data sharing. Consumers are looking for that visibility into where their cargo and where their goods are. And the stakeholders in the industry that embrace that change and move forward with it will again be streets ahead of the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a, daylight between the leading players who are embracing data and are embracing technology overall when it comes to supply chain, and it's really been exacerbated by COVID.
I'm happy to say that there's a lot of Australian companies that have really come to the fore in this. We've got WiseTech Global, which is a major player on the world stage regarding CargoWise and all their other software hybrids that help freight forwarders and the processing of critical documentation for import-export. You've got other companies like Comply Group, which have been instrumental in creating software at very short notice to be able to manage labour resources across industries and across companies. So scheduling of labour becomes a lot easier rather than what's happening now, which is the continuous roundabout of labour being off due to infections and then coming back on board, the lack of planning surrounding all that. So there's a lot of companies doing some really great things in the space.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you see? How do you, as you said at the outset, it'll be great to say everyone is using the data properly and sharing, but I'm sure you'd agree that you see so many companies, especially big ones, still using old spreadsheets and different platforms and mix and match, like a mixed match of different things. What would you like to see for the industry, and what, as an industry, what do you think we could do better to try and help companies embrace data better?
Well, I think also governments have stepped up to the plate, and they're formulating data hubs, which I think is a great idea. Central points of where data is held, where different parties can access it. And, creating links between their own software and these data hubs will certainly alleviate a lot of the controversy around data sharing. So that's certainly very important. I actually attended the Traceability Summit that was launched in Canberra the last couple of days. And the Department of Agriculture knows that Australian exporters, particularly in food and agriculture, need to stay ahead of the world and be continue to be competitive. So they acknowledge and notice that a traceability summit and software that can trace product will certainly stand in their stead. So that's a great initiative that's been launched, and I look forward to seeing where that goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think Australia is leading the way in many of those traceability projects and industry sectors. As you say, agri, meat has been some fantastic dairy. There's been some great case studies. Australia is really world leading in every sense to show the world how to track from not only farm to plate, but actually whatever the product that those cows or sheep are actually eating as well, which is really mind-blowing when you get down into the granular detail.
Absolutely agree.
So, Sue, thank you so much for being part of today's episode. Again, congratulations from what you and the team of the association are doing to help the overall Australian industry across supply chain embrace data to get them across all these new technologies, innovation. So we look forward to staying in touch with that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of today's show.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. And hopefully we'll be talking about the successes next time.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. See you soon.
Thank you.
Have your products, warehousing, or distribution requirements changed in the past 12 to 24 months? There's a reason the world's best companies regularly tender their supply chain services. Professional tender management ensures you're getting the best pricing and solutions available for your business. ATLC delivers customised tender management programs for freight forwarding, warehousing and distribution services. ATLC's programs deliver real and measurable results by only inviting suitable service providers to compete for your business. Simply tell us about your specific business needs. We design and manage the entire process for you. ATLC goes to market and does all the work. However, you get to make the final independent awarding decisions. Contact us today and we'll help you get the most out of your supply chain partners.
Welcome back, everyone. Now I've got the pleasure of being joined by Sean Crook. Sean's a director at Neolink Australia. They're a really rapidly growing freight forwarder who's leading the way in the way that they handle and capture the data and utilise that to improve the customer experience and the way they can manage their freight for their customers. Thanks so much for joining me, Sean, on today's show.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's awesome to be a part of it.
Sean, before we get stuck into a few questions, please tell us about Neolink Australia and what makes you so different.
So Neolink, we're a global logistics services business or a freight forwarding business. So we're an Australian-owned company. We started the business in 2017. In the last I would say that in the probably since the pandemic started, our business has sort of grown quite significantly. So we finished 10th on the Smart 50 list and also on the AFR Fast Starters list. And I'd like to say we're a new age freight forwarding business that's been working with Australian importers and exporters.
Thanks, Sean. That's a perfect segue to my first question. So how has your customer service and communication requirements with your stakeholders, evolved over those past few years? And as a freight forwarder, how's it all changed?
I think the best way of probably explaining it is if you look at what forwarding was like, or even supply chains pre-COVID, 80% of the time everything went well, 20% of the time things went wrong. And that's completely flipped on its head since COVID. Yeah. And that puts a lot of pressure on supply chains, but it also puts a lot of pressure in terms of how businesses just talk to each other and the methods of which they talk to each other. So I think there's been some great reports come out in the industry around Intercom talking about the customer expectation gap. And that's not just related to freight forwarding, that's related to sort of probably a variety of different industries. So I would say that the way that we've had to evolve, it's more having a conversation with data and trying to identify probably bottlenecks or challenges before they occur. The good news is that customers are aware of the global supply chain issue. It's in the mainstream press. People probably didn't even know what a freight forwarder was, probably even a few years ago. Now everybody knows what a freight forwarder is, just in basic terms. So, but yeah, it's definitely evolved. I think having the conversation with data, trying to identify those bottlenecks is absolutely key. And we found that our way of doing business and our way of proactively capturing data early and having the conversations early, whilst it doesn't solve a lot of the global supply chain problems, you're able to maneuver and have a bit more agility in those supply chains. And if you don't, even though people are understanding of the supply chain crisis and Shanghai's in lockdown as we speak, they still want things here today and they want things now. And that's definitely not going to change. Absolutely,
Sean. Couldn't agree more. I think all the challenges that shippers have faced over the recent past and continue to face, there is much more stronger appreciation of how valuable freight forwarders are and how important supply chain management really is. Sean, that leads me into another question. What has typically been the tools used to communicate with customers, and what were they typically using to have some sort of visibility before the new sort of evolution in data came about?
Look, I think a lot of the data, we have access to WiseTech and CargoWise, obviously, which is a fantastic platform. It consolidates a number of different data sets, which a lot of freight forwarders have access to. A lot of that reporting and communication that is typically done is quite customized. We provide a lot of data early to our customers before, I would say probably COVID, but there was still a lot of people that were using manual Excel spreadsheets. A lot of it was done, potentially either through email or automated communication. But I would say a lot of it was done either by email or by phone, and we were always pretty mobile and agile. We had a lot of stuff that was cloud-based, but I would say a lot of it was pulling from a variety of different information sources to try and get to one source of truth with the customer.
Thanks, Sean. Look, I mentioned from the outset of this episode that it's proudly sponsored by Logixboard, and you've been with Neolink Australia, one of the early adopters of Logixboard here in the country. I think you talked about the importance of having a relationship with data. How has Logixboard changed the way that you do business, and what's been the feedback from your team and your customers so far?
I think it's been fantastic. I think in terms of I'd like to always think that we were doing things in an incredibly proactive way as a business. And I think having those conversations with customers at the right point in time, pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of that already. But I think what Logix has actually done is it's enabled to kind of have that one source of truth and facilitate a conversation with our people that's really complemented kind of our core offering as a business. And that's enabled our customer supply chains to be quite flexible. And I think it can be used in a variety of different ways, Logixboard, but I think if you're just wanting to send it on to people and have people that use it as just a fundamental basic track and trace tool, that's all very good. But if you really want to use it and capture data earlier and have all of the inputs that you want and use a platform to sort of facilitate that conversation between, if you're an importer or a merchant, having access to real-time data technologies, there's the proof's in the pudding. McKinsey have come out with it, 15%, I think, reduction in logistics costs, 35% improvement in inventory and stock turnover, and 65% improvement in customer service levels. So we know that these technologies work and digitalization is working in supply chain, but what often doesn't get talked about behind it, I think, is the people and the actual people conversation and the decisions that get made. And what we found is really what it's enabled us to do is make decisions quicker with our customers and get them on board with those decisions quicker, that if there is delays, we can identify the bottlenecks, we can see vessel AIS tracking data, and we know if there's, if the vessel's due to come to Sydney and we know it's heading north towards Korea and there's an issue, we know there's something wrong. But without that one source of truth, we were probably having to pull from a variety of different data sets to have that conversation, whereas now it's all very synthesized and presented to the customer in the best possible way.
Absolutely, Sean. I love the way that you've actually explained for all that to the viewers, because it's so important, as you say, that one source of truth, the ability to have agile decision making through real-time data, and how that enables you as a forwarder to really provide strong solutions to try and navigate some of these supply chain challenges. As we've talked about, it's really, in the past, it may have been a nice to have this sort of data capability or visibility capability, but now it really is a must-have. You really just can't survive without it in these challenging times.
I literally had a meeting today with a I can't say the name, but a very, very big food business and food importer and exporter today, and it's all Excel spreadsheets. And it's funny that it's funny even still now 2 years later, not everybody's sort of caught up, I think, with a lot of the changes. And I think that, even what we've seen in Shenzhen and what we have seen in Shanghai in the most recent weeks is that there's still things that can happen. And these are once in a lifetime events that seem to be happening back to back. So I completely concur that we have to, I think if you're not doing it, it's almost table stakes now. You don't have a choice.
Yep, and that actually leads me into another question, because Sean, as we know, the Australian market is a small market when it comes to volume of shipments, but it's a saturated market for freight forwarders. How has Logixboard made a difference for Neolink Australia? And how do you identify it? Is it a differentiator for you and your team?
Oh, look, it's been incredibly important. I think in terms of our growth, we've probably, I would say 80 to 90% of our growth as a business has come from new business. And so we've now got, probably about 200 importers and exporters that we work with on a regular basis. And I'd say that every meeting that we probably have at the moment from our sales team, this is the primary conversation that we're having is around digitalization. And, we're seeing extremely high conversion rates. I mean, we're converting at probably 75 to 80% of new businesses that we meet with. And, I think that talks to not just us, but I think it talks to the demand and the need and from the broader supply chain industry on how we better rethink what we've been doing over the course of the last 5 years and what tools and capabilities are out there. And as I said, I think it's a combination. And if you can present and you can talk to the combination of that and people and still deliver a very customized solution, then we are seeing significant benefits, despite the fact that there's competition there. And the one thing that we don't talk about is that you do in Europe and in North America, there are digital freight forwarders, and we don't have digital freight forwarders here in Australia. Well, not any in the larger sense. And this is kind of a real opportunity, I think, for us to provide customers with very similar, if not better solutions, in fact, than what they're probably getting, some of these big digital freight forwarders in European and North American markets.
Absolutely, Sean. They're really strong, tangible differentiators. And, I think one thing I observed is that the new decision makers, they are really data savvy. They're a new generation, a bit younger than my demographic. And, they're coming through really hungry for all this data. They know how to use it. And I think that if it's a way that they can appreciate what you're offering at Neolink. So, yeah, that's really powerful.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we forget this generation that is coming through. They're used to, I can see that Shipper are delivering clothing through Uber within, 30 minutes. So this, and you can see from when it's getting picked up, you can see from when it's getting delivered. So it's a very, very savvy user base that we have to deal with. And I think that the one thing that's challenging within the supply chain model that you're never going to solve is that the tech stack, anything that can solve the tech stack issue within supply chain is really important. And I think, look, I've always been a proponent of the so what question with data. And I think we have to you can have all the data in the world, but if you don't know what decisions to make at what point in time to avoid those bottleneck conversations, it doesn't matter. And we do see we see almost a 20% difference, just pure transit times of customers that work with us using Logixboard that don't use Logixboard and work with us. And we try to push it and they don't even want to take it on board. Yeah. But 20% of the ones that do, they see a dramatic improvement in efficiency. And it's not just down to the platform. It's down to, I stress sort of the conversations, the decisions that happen at the right time with that information.
Absolutely, Sean. I think, what I'm hearing from you is that, and I've been an observer of this and a big supporter of this transition as well, is that shippers have actually moved from a landed costing analysis actually to a cost to serve, a true cost to serve analysis. And that they've really been able to start to take all the data that comes in and have a real true visibility of the impact on all those decision-making skills. So yeah, really important stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree.
Thanks so much, Sean. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It's great that I can actually ask you before and after, if you like, about the Logixboard experience and how it's making a great difference and impact for your team and importantly for your customers. So congratulations on the work you're doing, because I think with supply chain in such a mess that it is, it really does shine through with this type of ability to look at data and manage it effectively.
No, thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. And yeah, I'm hopeful that some of these bigger issues don't keep happening in the industry and we can sort of get back to quote unquote business as normal. But whilst it's not, a lot of these awesome technologies are out there for us to help people with.
Thanks again, Sean. Absolute pleasure to have you on, and look forward to keeping in touch and seeing the journey evolve even further with yourself and Neolink Australia. Welcome back, everyone. Now we've got the absolute pleasure of being joined all the way from the US by our VIP for today's show, Julian Alvarez, who's the founder and CEO of Logixboard. Hi, Julian. Great to meet you.
Lawrence, thank you so much. It's great to meet you as well. And thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for getting up extra early to record this with me. Julian, look, I'd love to talk about Logixboard, but I want to ask you about your personal journey first, and why you decided to create Logixboard in the first place.
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that. I think ultimately it kind of came down from down to a pain that we as founders experienced. I started the company with my brother about 6 years ago. He worked at a really large freight forwarding company in the US called Pilot Freight Services. They were actually just acquired by Maersk. And he had a lot of difficulty kind of answering the basic question of where's my stuff to his customers. His customers kept calling him and emailing him. At that point, it was phone calls, emails, WhatsApp, Skype. It didn't matter what kind of the method of communication was. All of his customers were trying to understand where their goods were. And he was completely inundated. I think he figured out a hack with one of his key accounts where he was sending them an Excel table 3 times a day, completely updated. And his customers seemed to be thrilled by that. They would tell him like, hey, this is the best service that we're getting out of any freight forwarding company that we're working with. And that was kind of our aha moment. Anytime that you see things being done in Excel and that working really well, you figured it can be automated. So I'd say that coupled with the rise of digital freight forwarding companies in the US, particularly Flexport, which has raised billions and billions of dollars to build a kind of digital first freight forwarding company, gave us the idea that there was an opportunity in the space that the industry would have to digitize, and that 10 years from then or 10 years from now, all freight forwarding companies were going to adopt better kind of customer-led technologies. That was the beginning of our journey. If we look forward to where we are today and growing really rapidly, I think that bet ended up being kind of the right one. But when we first started, it was certainly not as apparent as it is today. I think COVID deeply accelerated kind of that digital transformation, and we've been fortunate to be able to work with freight forwarding companies across the globe in making those transformations possible.
Wonderful. I think I've read a bit about the journey, and it is really rapidly growing. And I wanted to ask, for those freight forwarders here in Australia who are watching this interview and I think I've heard of Logixboard, I don't know much about it. How's Logixboard different to the software that they're probably used to, Julian?
Yeah, I'd say most freight forwarding companies that we work with, and Australia is actually one of our top 3 markets. It's actually one of our most rapidly growing markets. Most of the freight forwarding companies that we talk to in Australia are typically using an operating system to manage their internal operations. I'd say those systems are largely built for the internal operators at freight forwarding companies and acts as a source of truth. I think it gives you the ability to get your operation up and running, and they're typically very focused on making you much more efficient than if you're only working on Excel tables and email, right? I think for us, where we see a lot of the value for our customers is how do we help you become a customer first company when it comes to technology? So it's a customer facing application. It's actually built for your customers to be able to answer those basic questions of where's my stuff, where's my documents, what's happening in customs, what's happening with my POs. So it's helping you provide that visibility directly tied into your operating system. And the most important part for us there is really like, what is the ROI of those investments? I think ultimately as a freight forwarding company, most of these companies have low margins. These investments are important to them. So trying to understand where am I going to get value is really critical. I know you just had Sean from Neolink on the show. I think Sean said something the other day that I thought was really interesting. Him getting his customers up and running into Logixboard is giving him the ability to deliver goods much faster to them than he's been accustomed to. So in that sense, it's like, how do you actually deliver a much better service to your customers that are up and running? We've also seen many of the customers that we work with start to win a lot of new business by using Logixboard. And a lot of those companies are actually based in Australia. It gives you really strong differentiation when you can couple great people in your operation, great service, capacity, and a really strong network, and you tie that with great technology that makes you different than all the other forwarders out there. It gives you the ability to win a lot of new business as well. And then the last component that I would add there, many of the companies that we work with will sometimes reach out to us and say like, hey, I am about to lose one of my biggest key customers because I don't have the right level of technology. Can you help me? That's something that we obviously want to try to avoid, but we get our customers up and running really, really quickly, typically on average 2 to 3 weeks, and allow them to deploy kind of this new customer-facing technology that can have deep impact into their ROI calculations. And our goal is to make our customers as successful as possible and make that that ROI equation completely in their favor.
Yeah, that's what you've just described there. Being an ex-freight forwarder myself, I know that what you said about the inward operating focus of a business, about increasing processing, making sure all your documents are all in line and you can be as efficient as possible. But I love the way you talked about, Julian, the customer-facing experience and trying to really rethink the mindset of a forwarder. And I think what your platform does is really enable them to engage with the customer like never before. So, congratulations on that. I wanted to ask, you've answered a bit of this already, but what's been the overall experience, not just in Australia, but globally? What's been the customer experience and the feedback from freight forwarders so far?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. It's something that we're consistently trying to measure. I think as a software provider, you're really conscious that you need to continuously deliver better product, better services, and how happy are my customers. We've only ever had 2 freight forwarding companies come up for renewal and not renew, actually, which to me is the most telling sign. One of them shut down the freight forwarding operation, and the other one changed their operating systems into a system that we did not have direct hooks with. So I think that tells you a really good story of how much value are we actually delivering to our customer base. I think generally speaking, regardless of geography, we continue to hear the same feedback. Logixboard is helping us win a lot of new customer accounts. Logixboard is helping us prevent churn from key customer accounts, and Logixboard is making us a much more efficient operation by being able to unlock our people to focus on the most critical tasks and helping us automate some of those functions to make our customers self-serve. So that feedback or that kind of loop seems to be continuous regardless of market. Generally speaking, though, I think we've really focused on those 3 kind of value propositions, and we invest really heavily into that as well. We have a customer experience team and a customer support team that really focuses on partnering up with the companies that we work with and making those digital transformations a reality. And I think in us coming in and understanding kind of what's best in class in these digital transformations, we're able to make these processes seamless and really efficient for freight forwarding companies across the globe.
And I think the fact that you said earlier, Julian, the ability to get them on board and up and running quickly is a major, major plus, because that's one of the major pain points in any business, but especially when it comes to shutting or transitioning from an old system into this new platform. That ability to switch that on quickly, I'm sure, is a huge relief and comfort to companies coming on board.
Yeah, I think for us, integrating to these operating systems, for example, like integrating to CargoWise, we can get any company that has CargoWise. If you're a small freight forwarding company, we can get you up and running in 2 weeks. If you're a medium-sized freight forwarding company, we can probably get you up and running in 4 weeks. That's because we've invested really heavily into building integrations into those operating systems and working with providers that have deep experience with the underlying systems that you have, the data that's flowing through those systems. I think that's key. We made that a key premise for our business when we first started. We kept thinking about the metric of time to value. How fast are we going to be able to deploy and show value to the companies that we're working with? And it's one of our guiding principles. How do we continue to lower that time to value as much as possible so that freight forwarding companies can make these digital transformations and start winning new business and start delivering this to their existing customers to make them much more loyal and to deliver a better service. So I completely agree. I think it's a really important part of the story, but also a guiding principle for us as a software provider in the market. Fantastic.
Well, you definitely must be doing something right, because I want to ask you about the recent cap raise earlier this year. Congratulations. You've done, there's obviously a lot of buzz around Logixboard throughout the globe, and the industry itself is embracing it. So it doesn't surprise someone who's in the industry that you are, really being supported by other stakeholders to take this to the next level. So what's in store for the future for Logixboard, Julian?
That's a great question as well. I think what's in store for us is really helping our customers solve their biggest pain points, frankly. And like, when we start thinking about the value that we can deliver, we are really, really focused on helping freight forwarding companies digitize all of the customer experience into one central place. And again, that doesn't mean replacing people that are servicing your customers. It's really about how do we help augment that with better technology. So for us, we have this concept of, we want to be able to tell your customers and give them visibility into the entire life cycle of the shipment. Everything from, the PO all the way to the shipment, to customs, to warehousing, to payments, to invoicing. So becoming a one-stop shop to be able to provide that level of visibility and transparency is really critical, but also giving your customers an execution layer. Your customers are also managing their supply chain and trying to understand what's happening. If we can give your customer the ability to place and manage their POs on the platform, to place a booking on the platform, to place a quote on the platform, to have all of these touch points, to pay on the platform as well, to have all of these touch points aggregated into one central place, that provides deep efficiency to your customers, and in turn makes you a much better partner for them. So I'd say over the next 12, 24, 36 months, making that a reality is really critical, as well as being able to service freight forwarding companies that are, consistently reaching out to us and wanting to work with us, but where we don't have those integrations built up yet. I think building those integrations up so that we can work with freight forwarding companies, regardless of what backend system they use, will also be something really critical for our journey in the short to midterm.
Wonderful. Now, Julian, I know you're coming to Australia very soon. You're going to attend the IFCMA conference up on the Gold Coast in May, which I'll be there as well. Who are you hoping to meet, and what's your main purpose for coming down to the conference?
Yeah, honestly, I'm so excited to meet some of the companies that we've been working with. Sean, for example, we've been working with Australian companies, I'd say probably for the last 2 years, but a lot of these people are never people that I've had the opportunity to meet in person. All things, considered, COVID got in the way of us meeting a lot of our customer base. So meeting some of our customers that have told us stories of how successful they've been with the product, I think that's something that gets us up and running and gets us incredibly motivated to continue to build. So meeting some of our customers, meeting some of the companies and some of the folks that have helped us in our journey throughout the years, I think that to me is the most exciting part, frankly. At the end of the day, technology helps you accomplish a lot and digitize a lot, but ultimately it's a people business. We're dealing with people, so are freight forwarding companies, and I think cementing and strengthening those relationships is the biggest reason why we're going to be down in Australia, and super excited to meet everybody, of course.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited because, finally, we're not only getting to see you at the Gold Coast conference, but we're going to steal you away while you're in Melbourne before that, because we've got a really exciting event for freight forwarders in Melbourne, or they can come from interstate as well. But to come and meet you in person on the 10th of May down with ATLC, Australian Trade Logistics Corporation, we're going to put you all on a boat so we can actually try and get a chance to meet you in person, talk about Logixboard, but just have a chat and a drink and get to know you as a person. So can't wait for that, because we're really, really excited about that, Julian. I know there's a lot of people I've already mentioned it to, and they just can't wait. There's a great buzz to meet you in person.
Lawrence, thank you so much for helping us coordinate the event. I'm super excited. A boat in Australia sounds really good, coming all the way from Miami. So excited to be there, excited to connect with folks, and very much looking forward to it. Fantastic.
Well, Julian, I know you're a very, very busy man. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out to chat with me on the show. Can't wait to see you in Melbourne on the 10th, but also to see you at the conference on the Gold Coast with IFCABA. I know there's so many people who are really raving about the great work you and your team are doing. It is literally, transforming the way forward as can interact with their customers. So congratulations to you, your brother, the team, on the great work you're doing, and I can't wait to see how that even grows further into the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words, and I look forward to seeing you in May.
Likewise. Thanks, Julian. Take care.